Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we are here live at the World Trade Center. We're going to be talking about everything that is terpenes. We are here with some awesome guests, and so let's just kind of get right into the bios here. First off is David Heldreth with True Terpene. Next up is Dr. Alison Draisin. She's representing Terpestival and CASP. And remotely, we have Kayla Hall with Cannabinder.
And also remotely is Hunter Holliman with Forefront Ventures.
And then we have Nicole Wicker of Altopa. Nicole is the CEO and founder of Altopa, maker of the Oblend. And we are at the World Trade Center. It's a little shout out to them. The World Trade Center grows trade and investment by providing direct access to the largest business network in the world with 300 offices in 99 countries. The World Trade Center Tacoma is the lone trade service for the Pacific Northwest. Their seminars, award ceremonies, and conferences can generate contacts and contracts. Trade research can clarify opportunities, and their matchmaking can turn those opportunities into trade. Personally, I get peace of mind with international purchase orders from bank guarantees and international letters of credit. I also like the e-commerce export store, which is partnered with Alibaba. It's translated to 18 languages and gives you an opportunity to put your products online and get them overseas to hard-to-reach places like Asia. All right, Kayla, I'm going to throw a question at you, just get your opinion on joints. California, number 5 GDP in the world, behind the U.S., and so they sell more pre-rolls than anyone else. And so when using cannabinoids and terpenes together, it can enhance the effects of the cannabis plant. So as cannabinoids bind to the endocannabinoid CB1, CB2 receptors, terpenes interact indirectly with them to affect their chemical output by modifying the availability of cannabinoids that pass through the blood-brain barrier. They even enhance neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine by altering the rate of production, destruction, movement, and availability of receptors. And so in your opinion, are these enhancements from terpenes the reason why infused joints and flavored oil vape pen sales have been steadily increasing, taking over market share from non-infused joints and flavorless vape pens?
As far as my experience goes, with selling joints to consumers, again, I think I sell, when I was running the store up in Washington, I sold more infused joints because customers wanted to come in and get them based on how high the THC was. There wasn't really, it was, when I would try and talk about, this joint collaboration with these two farms, it's really exciting. Cascadia Gardens and Legit Canico, they came together and they created this amazing infused pre-roll that have cannabis-derived terpenes reintroduced. It's flavorful. It's full flower. It's pesticide-free. You try and relay all this information to the consumer, and at the end of the day, again, all they're interested in is how high is it going to get me. And I think infused pre-rolls are real fun, here and there. But I've had customers that come in and buy a 1 gram infused pre-roll with the added terps, the oil, and they buy it every day. Like they're smoking multiple and smoking it every day. And I don't think that's really all that beneficial. And I think we're kind of missing the point. I think when it comes to terpenes and concentrate, and it should be more of like a tasting experience, I think, where if you're wanting to dab, you should be wanting to do it for the flavor, and then trying to understand why you like that and why you enjoy that flavor. Then we can start delving into, well, it's actually got a lot of limonene in it, and that's found in that strain, sour diesel, that you really enjoy. I think I'm kind of going off of the question here, but ultimately, I guess I'm just trying to say the conversation hasn't really been about that thus far.
So what I have found in the Washington market is that distillate is cheap. I consider it hot dog water, because it is usually, not always, but it is usually the trim and the garbage that's left over from the plant that a company cannot make use of in any other way other than to make it into a distillate. And it ends up being very cheap. And then you add additional flavor, and consumers like it, because you can get a 99% THC level in distillate, and it's cheap, and it has high THC, and that seems to be what drives the the market. You know, it's a lot of Bud Light, Budweiser, people that choose those cartridges, and there's way more of those type of people than there are craft cannabis connoisseurs at this point. And that's kind of what I think that all of us sitting at this table, one of our missions is to educate so that we can increase the number of craft cannabis connoisseurs to be more mindful of the terpenes, the flavor, the quality, what's in their cannabis.
I definitely think you're hitting the nail on the head, but at the same time, speaking of Bud Light and speaking of beer and wine, like before Sam Adams, there wasn't really this discussion about what was going into beer and what craft beer was, and now it's a whole thing. Before Starbucks, that same thing didn't happen with coffee, and now we have the representation of that. But at the same time, there's still a large segment of the market that, again, buys Coors Light, buys Bud Light, and buys things like that. There's people who buy cheap wine. Are they bad people? Should they be chastised for their purchasing habits? Are we right about should be having higher terpene things, or or even, like, again, that could be negative as well. I think that it's going to end up playing out more like as these markets develop and people become educated. You'll have people that are the people who buy craft alcohol and spirits and wine and buy the higher end coffees. The people who have that want it.
Pilsner.
Exactly, that will want those products, and then you're gonna have the other side that wants that, and then you'll have people like me who sometimes like distillate's great for some edible products. Distillate's great, and I think it's just the market right now is just producing things, and we're not seeing like, oh, if you're cultivating, you should be cultivating for hash making, or cultivating for terpene extract, or cultivating for edibles, or instead of right now they're just growing cannabis and then using it for things.
And when you say the craft connoisseurs don't use distillate, would they use flower instead?
Craft connoisseurs tend to go for flower as well as other concentrates. Truth be, what I found from the Terpestival is that people tend to like live resin. Live resin is where you get your highest concentration of terpenes, and those who they really want that flavor. They want the flavor and the essence of the plant. Yeah. And whether it be CO2 as an extraction tool or BHO, butane, the live resin is where you're going to find your most flavor.
Yeah. I think when, as we're finding more and more medicinal properties of cannabis, I think the healthcare providers are having a hard time recommending flower because there are so many different terpenes on each little piece of flower, and they're used to medicine, and it's very precise and consistent, and you can't get that from smoking flower. And so that's why you're starting to see these isolated concentrates, and people trying to move into the medical world where you are creating consistent products so a patient knows what to expect.
What we find is that people don't want to smoke flower, for truthfully and medicinally, whether because they have cancer. Ethan Russo actually made a really good point that it's going to be very hard to get studies done on smoking and vaping because it involves a major organ, the lungs. Yep. And so, and what we tend to do at our clinic is we teach our clients how to make capsules so that they, go and, make it into their own extract with like an ethanol, and they fill capsules as opposed to smoking it, so that bypasses any inhalation, and mixed with a nice fat like MCT oil, then it really does the most benefit that it can for patients.
One caveat I would make is that CBD interacts with the cytochrome enzymes through blocking them, and then that causes drug interaction. And when you smoke CBD, it bypasses that metabolism, and so that doesn't happen. So I believe, and also people who have gastric issues, like my wife, she can't eat cannabis. Almost every time she eats cannabis, she gets sick. If she has a sublingual, fine. If she smokes it, fine. But because of her stomach issues, if she puts THC or CBD and it makes it to her intestines, she gets sick. So there will be people who can't use it for those reasons or have nausea issues, and so smoking is a better mode of application, I believe, or maybe an inhaler eventually. Yeah. But there's definitely, I don't believe, and because of the liver enzyme issues, I don't know if I believe that oral is always the best answer. Again, it depends on what you're trying to treat. It's complex answer, like you were saying.
Yeah, and something we're also finding out at the clinic that I think is pretty interesting is that if you have an estrogen-rich cancer, meaning that your body is producing too much estrogen, you have to be very careful about prescribing or suggesting, I should say, something with high THC because it does more damage. So for those type of clients, we recommend more of a CBD or a CBG cannabinoid concentration than THC.
There was just a paper out about that where it showed THC increased the growth of cancer in those situations for that same reason. Melatonin oppositely downtunes estrogen and helps with the opposite of that. So it's funny, just not funny, but interesting to see.
It's just something new, yeah, that it's just come out that we've been seeing.
Awesome. I mean, it's bad, but it's good to know.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point. We're starting to see a lot more of these. If by flavorless vape pen, you mean just like a cannabis flavored or just like a straight THC distillate?
The latter.
The latter, yeah. We're talking about non-cannabis flavored vape pens and non-cannabis native terp infused pre-rolls, then yeah, I think terpenes are obviously going to play a large part in the reason behind the increase in market share of these products. I really say this mostly because of consumers going after these products are likely recreational users or new to cannabis entirely. They may not know what cannabis tastes like or might not like what it tastes like. And so that flat, unflavored vape cart can be a lot more appealing. I compare this to novice alcohol users who might reach for an alcoholic soda or a sugary flavored liqueur because that seems a little less offensive than like a double IPA or a glass of scotch to a new consumer. So although these infused terpenes impart a familiar flavor and they play a role in that market share, I would actually say it's the marketing around these products that is driving the increase in market share. Because it's really reaching out to consumers that might not be interested in cannabis or might be turned off by it just because of the flavor. To be fair, I see this product category best represented by the flavored cart scene and less by infused pre-rolls. As it's really uncommon to see a terpene-enriched pre-roll or terpene-enriched flower, although we're starting to see that some SKUs like that come out in certain markets. And why shouldn't my soccer mom sister want a strawberry daiquiri or toasted marshmallow flavored vape pen in her purse if she doesn't like the flavor of cannabis? Like that's totally acceptable. I think it's important to be offering these products to be able to reach the largest demographic possible. If you don't, you're leaving money on the table as an operator. That being said, the toasted marshmallow Smirnoff flavored distillate cart or, whatever crazy strawberry daiquiri flavoring is going into it, fake terpenes. These products really do have some deficits when compared to the broad spectrum soft pens, for example, that have, a host of secondary cannabinoids and cannabis native terpenes in them. Really, though, it's the lack of education around these products that's concerning to me as an operator and something I take very seriously, trying to express to the retail establishments that, we're distributing to or even training our own bud tenders in our own retail establishments. It's like, talk about distillate versus broad spectrum. Look at flower on the shelf. Of course, everyone's buying flower based on potency, and it's crazy that that's what's driving it. Everyone wants that 30% THC cannabis. But when I go into a store, I'm really not, as an educated consumer and as a patient, I know that the 18% THC that has 2% CBD, 1% CBG, and like 5% terpenes by composition is going to get me, more effed up if that's the intention than just smoking that straight 30% flower that's basically, smellless and doesn't have any other second cannabinoids. So I think there's a big education piece that's missing in the market right now. And again, that kind of ties back to the move towards solventless or mechanical separation as opposed to some of these isolated cannabinoids.
Yeah, and I think to your point, a lot of people will go in and ask about the highest THC level at the lowest price, and joints tend to be one of the number one products sold. And to my surprise, I think BDS Analytics came out and said that the number one demographic within that category of pre-rolls was white women 55 and older, which I was pretty surprised about. But I do think that the infused pre-rolls are probably more about how high can you get rather than enjoying a terpene profile.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I'm not throwing shade on these product categories at all. There's a demographic out there, and they need to be served. We do our own kind of distillate infused pre-roll. We actually freeze dry the distillate with some non-cannabis terpenes in them, and then we're able to shatter that distillate and homogenize it in with the flower to really have like the super powered pre-roll. Are they my favorite? No, personally, not my thing, but they're very popular in Washington where we brought them onto the market.
So I want to thank everybody for being here today, and appreciate you being on the podcast, The Talking Hedge. I'd like to thank my guest, Nicole. She's with the Oblend, or Altopa, maker of the Oblend. I'd like to thank Alison. She's representing CASP and the Terpestival. I want to thank David. He is here with True Terpenes.
I also want to thank my guest, Hunter Holliman with Forefront Ventures.
And Kayla is here representing the Cannastamp and Cannabinder.
Thanks, Josh.
And we're going to wrap this up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is a Talking Hedge, your cannabis business podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.